लेट्स सी वेदर अपने इसको पूरे रास्ते अच्छे से ले जा सकते हैं. फैक्ट दैट now that AI is there and many of the monotonous work would be is getting replaced and would be replaced soon. Graduation in India, commerce graduation in India is very underwhelming. So I must have started teaching CA way back in 2000, and I've taught many chartered accountants. Over the years, it has moved into CFA, FRM, and I have evolved as to what I know about life. I used to have the understanding that जिन लोग साइंस स्टूडेंट होते हैं वो बहुत सुपर सुपर ब्रेनी होते हैं एज कंपेयर टू कॉमर्स स्टूडेंट्स. दिस वाज वन मिथ आई वाज कैरिंग विद माई सेल्फ. द सेकेंड मिथ वाज जो लोग फॉरेन यूनिवर्सिटीज से MBA करते हैं वो लोग शायद बहुत ही ब्रेनी होते हैं, अलग लीग में फॉल करते हैं. देयर आर पीपल आई हैव मेट along the path as students who have really shown to me that I was wrong. I think over the last 10-12 years, I have always shared the name of a student in my classes, and I could not help because it has naturally come to me. And that is Krishna Killa. I shouldn't introduce him further, and we should engage in a podcast with Krishna Killa. Believe me, any of you who are watching this, you will have such a valuable insight into everything that you are confused about. I cannot mention. Watch it till the end. I never say this. I'm saying it right now. Like, subscribe, or whatever it is said. Okay, Krishna Killa.
Thank you. I think you're saying more than what is deserved, but thanks. I think it's lovely to be here and lovely to talk to all students.
So, first of all, let me tell you that there has been less sleep at his end. Okay, he has been traveling. But I think once logic and rational starts, okay, the sleep deprivation won't be a worry.
No, and one thing, as investors, we should always be prepared for less sleep. I think whatever you can sleep, you've already slept. Once you start working, especially in investing or consulting, just be prepared for much less sleep.
So, Krishna, coming straight to the point, I know you are from Assam, Guwahati.
Yeah.
And your schooling took place over there. And then you moved to Calcutta. Okay. So take us through your journey as to how happened. And in your journey, if you could recall certain things that were very distinct, that struck you, that this is, I think, something that reshaped me, do try to remember and share the same.
Of course. Thank you. So I am from a business family, Guwahati based. So grew up there in a joint family setting. I don't think I knew much about, what is life outside Guwahati till let's say my sister did her undergrad and she got into SRCC. That was sort of like became the North Star goal. And we realized, there's something outside of Guwahati called SRCC, St. Xavier's of the world. So the ambition became to sort of like try and get into that. So that was the first time. Did my class 12th, got into SR and St. Xavier's, chose to do St. Xavier's. Largely because one could do CA along with it. So I joined CA articleship here in Calcutta from College Education. During CA, sort of like when we started to see more of the world, that how our companies run, what does management think like, what do financials look like. Within that, I would also say undergrad education I was going through and CA education I was going through parallelly. And one thing which I think is still true was true back then as well, that undergrad education in India is sort of like underwhelming. You learn what you learn in CA. A lot of it is theory, a lot of it is practical, but I don't think you learn as much in undergrad, right? So I think that needs some form of course correction. So did my CA along in Calcutta. Was lucky enough to get into sort of like consulting from there. So I was one of the rank holders. That I remember back then, intent was more to get into CA practice. So I wanted to go back to Guwahati and practice. One fine day, someone from BCG called saying, why don't you come over for an interview? And I was like, what is this, the same BCG matrix fala BCG? And the person was like, yes, it's that. So I was like, okay, let's go. They were paying for the tickets, they were paying for the stay. So it was absolutely no problem going, and I went. I think that interview journey, I would say, was the first change of worldview. Sort of like looking at because because before they formally interview you, they sort of like assign a buddy to you who teaches you the case study method of interview, who sort of like takes you through that journey, what to expect, what not to expect, how to solve for those, how to crack those interviews, so to say. And sort of like that is when the first real sort of like understanding of how people think, what that that there are a lot of people is operating at completely different spheres of influence, right? And so I think I still remember the guy who interviewed me was this guy called Kanishk Raja. And I think 1 hour interview with him convinced me that, I can't be going back to Guwahati and doing my CA practice or running my financial services firm there. And it convinced me I had to sort of like come and learn this worldview and learn how this is done. So that was, I would say, the first real thing in terms of got into consulting. Spent some years there, mostly, and it was like, as a first time job, it's overwhelming, because you're suddenly talking to CEO of a 20,000 crore company, and you're just out of college and out of CA, and reality is you don't really know much, but you're expected to not sound like that. I think because you operate, and as a CA, this was the first time I was going into where, consulting firms, typically most other colleagues are, everyone is from IT and IM. So you start from a position of sort of like some form of, for lack of better word, inferiority complex, to say that, do you even belong here, right? So you have that imposter syndrome, to you don't know whether you belong there or not. And I think people around you also maybe do not know whether you belong there or not. That's the time you need to perform and show that, yes, you're as good if not better. uh, the one thing is that, consulting is, end of the day, to some extent, finance, markets, like business, right? Which fundamentally we are better poised than, let's say, an engineer, right? But we need to believe that. You don't tend to believe that early on, but reality is that is true, and we need to believe it. So that was few years in consulting. Got an opportunity from there to move into private equity. So, I was like, this is such a great life, why will anyone move? A senior of mine interviewed in this firm called Bain Capital. I was like, why are you even going? This such good life, such great food. So then he explained, what the compensation in private equity is like, what life in private equity is like, what is it that you do. As consultants, you sort of like advise. As private equity investors, you tend to work that advice, you put dollars into those advice, and sort of like see whether that makes sense, whether that make money. And if you are entrenched and long term into that ecosystem, you make some part of that profit as carry. So, and that sort of like got me into completely another trajectory. I think of it as this way: out of CA pool, maybe couple of hundred people get rank. Out of that, few single digit students get into consulting, whether that is in McKinsey or BCG or firms like these. And then people from all of these consulting firms, whether they've come in through an IIT or through an IM or through CA pool, then compete for maybe 20 slots in a year that open up in private equity, right? That's it, right? So maybe 300 top notch IIT, IM, and CA talent competing for 20, maybe not even 20, 15, 20 vacancies. And sort of like to get through that is difficult. But once you get through, again, it sort of like puts you into another orbit. uh, I would say, fortunate enough to get into that orbit. So there you learn again the next, so that just pushes you into doing a different level of conversation. You're talking to CEOs, CFOs, promoters of the world, to try and understand what does the company do, where can it go from there, what amount of money is needed for it to go. Of course, as a junior, my role is to model all of that out, help the partner and the team decide. But these are small teams, these are not like large teams, these are 8-10 people team. So everyone's doing thinking, everyone's doing their own workload management. So you tend to, of course, learn a lot in that setting, right? So I think that was the early part of my career, first in consulting and then in private equity. I think it's one of the steepest learning curves that we as students of finance can get into. And I think I was fortunate enough to sort of like get into that. um, from there, then I had two choices, sort of like either continue that journey, or Some of my friends were going to Harvards and Stanfords to do their MBA, or to do that. For some, I don't know what got into me, but I didn't choose either of those two options. I started my own company. It was called Life Care. So we were diligencing this company in healthcare while at Bain Capital, and I realized that this is a segment which makes sense. Very few organized players. There's an ability to do something here. So I started my own company in healthcare, scaled that up. We ran about a couple of 100 crores in top line, across pharmacy, pharma distribution, pathology. We were a subscription pharmacy. We raised capital from best of institutional VCs like Elevation and Nexus. I think we raised close to 110 crores up to Series B for 500 people team. But like it is in D2C, sort of like direct to consumer tech businesses, your burn is high. So either you sort of like keep raising and keep scaling, or you sort of like fold and shut, right? So we could divest some part of the business, but for most parts the losses were too high. So we ultimately sort of like uh, moved on from it. This is after running it for 6-7 years. Then I started Ironclad, sir, which is what I do now. So which is moving back to a finance and investing role, which I love. So as Ironclad, I do two things. We run a public market PMS firm. It's a flexi cap fund where we invest in mid, small, large caps. The intent is to help grow, sort of like generate decent returns in public markets. Think of it as maybe 4-5% better than mutual fund is sort of like the long term targets. The other fund we run is a venture fund. So we are a very differentiated fund in that sense. We run a secondaries fund where we buy uh, equity from angels, from early employees, from founders in companies which are backed by top tier VCs. So I would say we are probably the only fund of its kind. So these are the two funds we run. Small team. So, but back in finance in last couple of years, loving this much more, and sort of like, yeah. So that's the brief intro about me. I think, in hindsight, CA is sort of like one of the best courses which gives you the right, I would say, training. The thing which I think we need more of is more practical orientation around it, especially from a capital market standpoint. But I think, yeah, that's.
So I happened to uh, go to his house for dinner recently, and there I asked your wife about the quality of life, in the entire consultancy, then private equity to self venture funded business, and and then to the current PMS and venture fund role. So your wife told me that right now the quality of life is the best.
It is. I think that's a function of scale. Hopefully as you scale things, you get less time, but I think investing allows you that flexibility, right? And quality of life is also a function of how maybe she sees how happy I am versus how stressful running a venture funded business is, and she's able to compare and contrast the two. In investing, you tend to read a lot, you tend to meet people, you tend to sort of like, it's as a different quality of work than running a venture funded company. Because in a venture funded company, that's great, you're seeing actual execution, you're seeing what the results of your labor are able to give value to customers. But because you are also running a loss, there is sort of like back of the mind this math that there is a runway, there is you need to raise the next round. To do the next round, you need to do ABC, and that sort of like eats into you. So the life of a founder therefore is not, contrary to what people believe, I think life of a founder in a venture funded company is not great, right? So entrepreneurship sort of like eats at you. I think investing in that standpoint, because your eggs are in 20-25 different baskets. So if we, in our public market PMS, we invest in about 20 odd companies. If A doesn't do well, B does well, right? You have to be really, in India, which is growing real GDP at 6-7, nominal GDP at 10, 11, 12. You really have to be like really stupid not to like not to make some money, right?
Also, over the years, this mutual fund cult has explained to people that wicket pe tike raho.
Wicket pe टिक रहा. I think people have now gained enough critical mass, and enough people have made money after investing in downturn, or they've at least seen people close to them make money. So people realize it's a long game. So like we're going through a small cap
Mhm.
meltdown right now as we speak. Small caps have underperformed, brought up a nifty massively, right? But people are not selling, people are staying put. FIIs are selling, that's their call. India is not an AI trade, so people are selling, and they want to go into AI trade. Matlab, of course, people would tend to agree. If I was a fund manager managing dollar assets, I would also invest in semiconductor and sort of like TSMCs of the world and Nvidias of the world, rather than investing in hardcore consumption based themes like India. So you can't fault them for it, but that's what India is going through, and but it's okay. It gives India the ability to own more of our own companies. So think of it. Otherwise this transition would have been very expensive for Indians to own more of India. Because of current transition, this movement from FII ownership to DII ownership is coming at relatively better prices. So I think make hay while the sun shines. So it's a good time.
Correct. I will not divert too much into current state of the markets right now. Okay. But because then it's unstoppable. We can talk about the budget yesterday, this, that. Certain important questions I wanted to ask is, I have been very actively visiting a number of colleges. Like yesterday, last week I was in Christ College. I went to Ashoka. I went to SRCC. So I've been going. Now there, right now, students are spoiled for choice, which means that on their plate, they have so many certification programs that they can pursue. CA, CFA, FRM, now that CFA is allowed after class 12. So they are confused about that. Secondly, there is a lot of talk that has gone regarding internships. You should do internship, otherwise you don't know the practical world. So they also have to fit internship over there. Then they're all been raised in an environment where MBA has been taken to Mount Everest. As an MBA के बिना कुछ ही नहीं होगा. ठीक है? Here we find that you did not go for an MBA. Okay. So these students, certain numbers also that you quoted, I'll come to that in the next question, that 100 odd people gain rank at CA final, and then out of that maybe 10 or 20 get into consultancy, and out of that a very small number will get into private equity. So obviously we'll do two discussions. First discussion is generally the fact that you said that graduation in India, commerce graduation in India is very underwhelming. So in that case, what does a student do? Even yesterday there was a party, a social event. I met 6 students, 3 from BCom Xavier's Morning, 3 from Eco Honors. And these people are actually stressed. They're doing CFA, they've completed CFA level 1, a couple of them are doing CA. But every time they are feeling, they're having a FOMO factor. Okay, what I realized is that they are missing the main ingredient, which is skills. They do not have the practical skills, although they are piling up qualifications and certifications and internships. I have done 3 internships, I have done 2 internships. That's what their CV speaks about. So if you look at their CV, it will be clouded with a lot of words, but at the same time, when I am going to hire somebody, I doubt whether I will hire that or not. So can you comment upon what is going on and what do you think is the way out?
I'll give you an example, sir. So yes, they like this Friday, I was interviewing someone and he had 3 internships on his CV. One was from a NBFC, the other was from an insurance, and now he's working in a fintech. So I asked him, what did you do in these internships? And by and large, I think the first answer was what he's expected to give in an interview. But once you deep dive, you realize, he actually hadn't done anything, right? And he said, I knew this this friend of mine, and his dad used to head Rajasthan for that company, and he just got me this internship. It was a work from home internship. So work from home in an insurance setting, I don't know what do you learn sitting at work from home in an insurance company, right? So I would 100% agree with you. This whole internship mania, till you don't get practical skills, is sort of like very I think people look through that. I think people who are looking to hire generally don't count these internships as much. They see that student has done some initiative versus someone who's not done anything at all, because it's very little. There is very little to differentiate between someone, let's say, who's done things and who is not. What I can tell you is what people look for is spikes in when in your CV as well as when you talk. So I would say that one thing from my experience, when we've shortlisted CVs to hire people in companies, the clear answer is everyone's CV by and large looks same. So the way to differentiate between CVs is to look for spikes. People say, okay, has this person done something different? Does this person seem to sort of like have a different worldview, right? And so those spikes are the first to get shortlisted. But that will get you into the room. What will get you across is sort of like the real skill, where people realize that, whether you understand the subject matter or not, whether you are inquisitive enough to learn new things or not. So I would say uh, this learning skill is sort of like very important, and uh, but that onus is right now on the student themselves. For whatever reason, undergrad is not taking up that onus in India, and therefore it is either on student themselves or so tutors and institutions like you to provide that, right? Because otherwise it's very difficult. It's a very competitive world out there, and so therefore
So
students should be better prepared.
so the two things that you said, let us just revisit them. You said that what will get him on the interview table, and the second was the skill part, that if he actually has the skill, it will get him through the this thing. So what you need to have to sit on the interview table, for that, one hint that you gave, or the word that you used, was spikes in his CV, or in his or her CV. Now, so how is it all happening? How do you identify, or at large scale? Okay, say you are a PMS which has started, so you may be having only that much requirement right now for uh, human capital. But those who are at the helm of affairs, so the spikes will be identified using AI. Or what is your view regarding how is it being identified?
Typically, what happens in, well, I think I'm not talking about our firm as an example, but more broadly, what would happen is the batch which just came in the year before is given the responsibility to shortlist.
Okay.
So let's say the batch which was hired in 2025 will be shortlisting out of all the CVs that are received in 2026. And that 2025 batch will be given a certain mandate of what to look for. I'll give you an example. Almost everyone's CV around that time would look like 90% in 12, 90% in 10, good colleges, and then sort of like some certification and some internships, right? By and large, CVs would look like this. Their role is to look for, so when they do this, there are 3-4 basic things they do. They look at who are the top ranks within the institute. They get definite call. Who are the guys who've done something different, right? So let's say some social entrepreneurship, some initiative that they would have done, run the school fest, or part, or sort of like led the student union or something like that, right? So which shows initiative. They get shortlisted. Then there is a certain set of students who would have done some real work ex, where that this guy has went and actually done something on the factory shop floor, or where from the CV you could read that there is this drive. So these are the kind of people who typically get shortlisted. Otherwise, point blank, if you look credentials, everyone looks the same. So that is the kind of shortlisting that happens, and then from that you tend to select based on the interview, right? So, but those processes at times, it's very difficult to say that they're 100% fair processes, right? Because it is very, very likely that the same two CVs, one is selected and the other is not, and this one who wasn't selected ended up being in an FP&A role, joining some IT services company, and from there just living a very different life. Well, I can take my own example. My first job was not BCG. Actually, I got an offer from Indian Oil to join their FP&A division in Haldia. I was stupid enough to ask them, can you give me this placement in Guwahati? And they said, GMs are not able to choose their placement, like their posting. How do you as a fresher expect? And then because of that, I didn't join. But if I had joined in an FP&A division in Indian Oil, my life would have been very different, right? So, and it is the same. In this case, it's not even two different individuals, right? It's my CV getting shortlisted at A or B. So, which happens even today. So there is some degree of luck, but I would say that there is some degree of initiative that can also get people there, right? And of course, marks and academics are table stakes. Without that, you're not even sort of like in the consideration set. And this is just, I'm talking consulting, but in investing, That answer is very different,
Hmm.
because investing world is very vast. Investing has research, equity research. Investing has brokers. Investing has buy side firms. Investing has family offices, and I think a lot of them may not have same or similar processes. So I would say, if you change the lens for a minute from consulting to investing, this answer and this pool of people and what you need to do to get into it is very different and very vast, because those opportunity sets are also large. It doesn't matter if you've joined a small brokerage firm or a small family office. I think the path from there to sort of like growing is also reasonably good, versus, let's say, a typical accounting job that most CAs would do, or a typical, let's say, research report writing that a CFA would do. So I think that pool is, I would say, good and vast as well.
So see, I have never applied anywhere for a job.
Of course.
Okay, for whatever reason. Now, recently I had an experience which I was really surprised, that one of my students, who right now is a research analyst and all, and also works with me uh, in terms of upgradations in academics. So he was sitting, and the CEO of our company, Vidyut, was sitting, and there was a talk about how CV should be made. CV. So this guy, the first guy, he has made CV for the last 7 years. So many, because he just went on applying here, there, and he must have invested scores of hours. Now Vidyut then took some time and created a CV for him. And when he saw the CV, he was startled. This is my CV.
ये मेरी CV है.
ऐसे तो मेरे लिए हमेशा ये था ना यार, CV 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 क्या होता है. बट थोड़ा सा जो डिस्कशन हुआ उससे ये समझ में आता है कि जब इतने सारे CVs हैं, तो अल्टीमेटली फर्स्ट चेक तो वही हो रहा है ना. बिकॉज कैसे कोई देखेगा आपको, कैसे जान लेगा?
नहीं जान सकता सर. और यू कांट फॉल्ट देम फॉर इट. आपको और मुझे भी वो काम दे दें तो हमारे लिए वो दो CV सेम है, राइट? क्योंकि हम वी डोंट नो द पर्सन बिहाइंड दैट. मतलब यू विल नो दैट पर्सन बिहाइंड दैट CV वंस यू मीट इन द इंटरव्यू टेबल, बट लाइक प्राइमरी शॉर्टलिस्टिंग में वो मोटा मोटा टेबल स्टेक्स है वो.
या एंड दैट इज द रीजन व्हाई जब हम लोग ये एनालिस्ट टैग डिजाइन कर रहे थे, तो उसमें जो फोर्थ वाला मॉड्यूल है, वी केप्ट इट ऑन करियर डेवलपमेंट, इन विच ये सारी चीज हो जाए. फाइनेंस वाला पार्ट भी, कि भाई स्किल्स वाला पार्ट कैसे होगा, ऑफ कोर्स होना चाहिए. इट्स नॉट अबाउट मैं दिखा दूं कि मेरे पास स्किल्स है पर नहीं है.
नहीं, वो फिर इंटरव्यू में सामने आ जाएगा, राइट? सो वो आई थिंक द की इज टू बी एबल टू write credibly what you have, because whether if you're not writing stuff, if you're writing stuff which you don't know, then it will show up in the interview. So that's even worse. But I think the program, of course, is suited at solving this.
So regarding this second part, ki once you have got to the interview table, then how do you crack the interview based on the fact that you have skills? In the investing world, let's talk about investing world. So investing world mein, when you are interviewing a person, the fact that now that AI is there, and many of the monotonous work is getting replaced and would be replaced soon. So in the fact that when you hire somebody and you see that somebody may be there with you for 2-3 years, and it's not his Excel skills per se which you are trying to analyze, how do you analyze his common sense investing framework, if at all? How do you go about? Or, so you can answer this, or you may, for example, exemplify a particular investment which has been made by you currently in your PMS or in the past, and that was, but you really felt that the thought process that ran as a result of your conviction making that investment, what was the thought process? How do you go about?
I think those are two separate
questions.
Let me answer what is maybe relevant for most students first, and then we can talk about the investing part of it also. I think once, by and large, in most investment firms, you will be asked to talk about an idea you like. Like, there is absolutely no two doubts about it.
And do they ask that so that they can get the idea?
No, I think maybe it is not. I won't say that that's not the case, because investors like to hear ideas from all corners, right? And then whatever you like, you research more. Whatever you don't like, you throw it in the garbage, right? So, but I think by and large, everyone will ask you that what do you like, right? And in a typical investment firm, you will generally meet everyone in the investment firm before you get selected, which is also a lot of people don't understand. But if there are like 10 people in the firm, you will meet all 10 right before you get selected, and any one of them has the ability to stand up and say, okay boss, I didn't get the vibe, right? And then you are sort of like out. So by and large, think that your investing framework needs to be in place, right? And a real framework, not sort of like no one is expecting you to sort of like give an LBO answer on a private equity buyout, but you are expected to know what creates value, right? And how you think about it, how you articulate it is important, and that can only come from skills. That cannot come from this is real. We've interviewed CFAs all the time, and if you ask them to articulate something, they are very, very, I would say, poor at articulating it. You won't fault them for it because they've not gone through the practical learning for it. So it's important for the person to have learned, and as a result of that, have the ability to explain why he or she likes or does not like a company or a sector. I think that's almost sort of like the first thing that people will ask after understanding your background, right? Because that's a way to engage. How do you otherwise do an interview? That's the way to engage.
And the best part is that you are opening the question to the other person. You are telling him, pitch your idea, na? So it's not that you are asking about anything in the world.
Yes.
So if that person is not able to pitch his idea, how would he earn his place?
Exactly. And maybe the person needs to earn his place by answering that, because you have the open field, and if you mug something and sort of like go and answer it there, people will look through it, right? So you really need to understand the sector, the company, the investing framework around it, and that will come from, I would say, reading, doing it yourself, doing some skill-based courses, but that's sort of like important. On the other question that you asked, I think rather than me talking about companies, I think
just one second. So when I showed you the entire curriculum of analyst stack, and especially the second fat module on investing,
yes,
okay, I could see that a person like you, who is generally not very impressed easily, you really felt that yes, this is the need of the hour. What is it that you really felt in that entire thing?
Yeah, I'll tell you. So I think the first thing which I felt after reading the modules was, I wish I had access to this when I was a student. Because I'll tell you the reality, when I had to prepare for an interview like that, I had to go to Harvard Business School and Stanford and all of those, their websites, download case studies from them to learn and understand how investing world actually behaves. And this, this is not like made up stories, this is the reality. You can go to HBS, you can download case studies based, and you can learn from them that how investors have made money in XYZ transaction, why ABC did not make money. Once you read 10 of those, you realize what is sort of like going through. And what I could see in analyst stack was sort of like what the purpose was similar, right? To give people a ability to understand how investing in reality works. And we see this all the time, that even people who've done CA or CFA understand capital asset pricing model, but they will not understand what really, how much beta really hurts. That if you're running a 1.5 times beta portfolio and markets are like down 25%, then it's easy to calculate that portfolio will be minus 40, but understanding the implication of that on end client, and how many of those calls you will get from those clients and investors to understand why the portfolio is down 40, that only real world experience can teach, right? Similarly, I'll give you an example. Teaching in a typical CFA course would emphasize too much on DCF. And in reality, what you do is do DCF to sort of like just justify the value.
Decorate.
Sort of what you really focus on is what are comparable companies trading at, what does the sector trade at, what are the historicals, and so therefore what could this company trade at. I can give example after examples of how theory is different from practical. And I remember a couple of months ago we were chatting and you talked about DuPont. DuPont is, of course, ROE is great, it's important, theory teaches us it's important, but in today's technology world, and we discussed about it, right, that the book value that Microsoft is choosing to have that book value. It could dividend out all of the cash, and its book value will fall by 90%, and so therefore DuPont is fundamentally based on book value and the return you drive on it, whereas technology companies के लिए the capital on the balance sheet is no longer a fundamental driver of either their growth or their margin. It's their the IP and the fundamental technology, the scalability of the technology is a fundamental driver, right? So this only a skill based practitioner who's actually doing it day to day will be able to explain this, that look at DuPont, but look at for it in this context, or look at DCF but use DCF for a solar park, but don't use it to calculate the valuation of that solar company, right? So that's why I would say skill is almost everything. The one thing which skill based learning also does, which theory does not, is skill based learning also opens door for you what academics could not. For whatever reason, I think for practical purpose, someone making 92% or getting 96% are almost equally good academic students, right?
Correct.
But and some place may have a 95% cutoff.
Hmm.
Whereas if you're 92% or 89%, but have the skill to invest, the world will accept you, right? And family offices will accept you, brokerages will accept you, the world will accept you into the investing world. So therefore, I would say skill is even more important, especially from an investing standpoint, because it opens doors.
The immaturity that I come across when you are speaking so much about it, let me give you two instances. The moment where we are sitting, I think gold has crashed by around 15-20%, okay, and silver by 35%.
Yeah.
So when I was traveling in Bangalore, there was a student of mine traveling with me, and he was showing me that he has entered into long gold futures.
Now?
Okay, 3 lots.
Okay.
And then he averaged out by putting the 4th lot.
Okay.
In as much as I can be close, obviously I'm not that close, I told him that you are stressing your life by doing this way because you have no basis for doing this. He's asking me, what do you think will happen? How can I say what will happen tomorrow?
No one knows.
Nobody will be able to say.
I think the only person who knows this answer is either Trump or Xi Jinping. No one knows what will happen.
Yeah. So, number one, just because they have learnt futures and options or whatever, in theory, they feel that since their parents have given them access to funds or access to the brokerage, this thing, and they can press, and once they earn, they'll try to show off that, look, I have earned. So, this is one immaturity which goes on. We are talking about investing, and it boils down to trading. And even if it is trading, I have no issue, but it has to have some basis.
Yeah.
It has to have some framework, some charts, some trading signal pattern with the help of which you are doing.
Exactly.
Second, just 1 second. Second question. Sir, this company announced a 25% growth in EPS, and look, the share price has fallen. A company announced a 25% growth in EPS, and so the share price fell after that.
I think this is exactly what one should be doing. That's the difference between retail talk and institutional talk, right? Retail investor will always talk like, this company share price has fallen from 100 to 80. Institutional guy will never talk like that, right? Institutional guys would always say that, the company's market cap is 12,000 bucks, 12,000 crores. It has come down to 10,000. Now it trades at 22 times earnings and growing at 18%. So therefore, it's a good buy. Whereas a retail investor will talk about, this used to trade at 150, now it trades at 90, therefore it is a good buy. I think the one thing that I believe, and sort of we are conflicted in this, but still saying out loud, that I think one thing that people who do this analyst act is whether they become fund managers in large private equity funds or not, or large buy-side mutual funds or not, they will definitely stop talking retail. They will learn the language of institutional speak. They will learn that, you need to look at if something was trading at 150 times earlier and now is trading at 70 times. Even if it has half, it is still expensive. And I think that is a life skill. That is not just about, it's not just about sort of like trying to understand, get into a investment firm. It's a life skill that will be useful to that individual for all his life, because if they understand compounding, and they understand compounding early in their life, along with ability to understand what's a good company, then no one can take that away from them, right? So I think that's one thing which I think this will also help people do beyond just sort of like solving for getting into good companies.
Now, the second part which you're going to answer, one particular example that you can share where you are really happy that what happened in that company was not purely out of luck or randomness, but what was perhaps thought out by you. You thought it would happen that way, if it has happened, and it turned out that way.
I think there can be n number of examples, but the one where I would say, which is a recent example I'll take, is and of course I have to disclaimer it. Me, my family, our investors are invested in these companies. So please, this is just a discussion for education
Yeah.
purpose. So I take an example of Paytm, right? Typically listed at about couple of years back. Not received super well straight after listing. Then the company was talking had issues with regulators. Stock price had crashed. It had come down to, if I remember, $300. At $300, it was 20,000 crore market cap, essentially with 12,000 crore cash on the balance sheet and a full blown like financial services business within it. What the street did not like was sort of like the fact that their payments bank license was taken away. But reality was that payments bank was contributing very little to the company's either revenue or bottom line. And that is an example where once you do some basic diligence, you realize this is super undervalued, right? The Paytm brand in itself was valued at more than $1 billion. Add cash to it, that you're getting that company for that price. So we decided to go in. We started buying at about somewhere close to 300, 320, bought up to 400, 450, 600 as well. So more by and large, the stock is now trading at about 1200 odd. So it was a 4x in less than 2 years, I would say. Uh, it matters because in an investment firm, your early wins sort of like communicate your way of investing, and that helps build credibility. uh, and because it's a sector which needed few good winners, because there is a winner in Eternal, because there is a winner in Paytm. People understand that technology can also create money, and it will create value for people in the long term. So this is a bet which where we why I'm choosing to give this example is where uh, where early in, where a contrarian bet against going against the market has proven out to be right. And not all your decisions will be right. I think the founder of Vanguard said that if 2 out of 3 are right, you are a good investor. So I'm taking that as the benchmark. You get 65% right, it's okay.
Yeah, but the that much which I know, you are not a typical contrarian investor.
So yeah, I think investing is contrarian. If you think about it, any trade that happens on the index, there is someone buying and someone selling, right? So if we are buying, someone is selling. If someone is selling, they have a view on it, right? So typically speaking, contrarian nature, if you're not contrarian to some extent, it's very difficult to make money being consensus. So the way we run our portfolio is we do 70% let's say growth investing, growth at reasonable price investing, and 20 to 30% to some extent, I won't say it contrarian, I would call it, we call it special situations. It doesn't need to be contrarian. A street could be completely aligned, but price may not reflect it because of flows. So it then doesn't become contrarian, but it just becomes a function of time. So we take those bets where that has ability to generate alpha. uh, but by and large, all of investing, I would say, is contrarian. You've seen what has happened to people who've done compounding machines, only compounding machines, getting into reasonably expensive companies. That has not tended to create returns.
One particular commonality which I am seeing is that, like, over the last 25 years, I must have talked lakhs of CAs. Now, when I'm meeting them, uh, Delhi, Bangalore, Bombay, all of them typically have the same situation, that they are stuck up into accounting, auditing, control functions. In absolute terms, given low per capita income of our country, if I say what they are earning, they must be earning, say, 20 to 25 lakhs per annum. And it may seem to be very high. But they tell me that when they are in their role, they know the role doesn't have that aura, that attraction every day. It's just like you are getting labor charges, and they don't see scalability. When they see their friends in the capital markets, doing great, okay, and enjoying a life which is fulfilling in terms of challenges and in terms of growth, they always feel how do they shift to the other side? Like you already went into that side, but how do they shift on this side, and the pain that comes with it in terms of cuts, okay, if any. So can you just remember your friends of yours or whatever it is into that domain, because you had a big friend circle,
Yeah,
okay, when you were doing, yeah.
I'll tell you. So I think you're right. I started from some of those roles, right? But I've had a lot of friends who did not. But what I'll tell you is a lot of time people have taken the longer path, but people who have determined to do it have gotten there. So I have a friend who is as educated, as good in, but he didn't get into consulting. He joined, let's say, the seventh or eighth largest firm rather than joining the top two, three firms. He spent time there, specialized in a sector, and then got into top tier consulting, right? So the answer there, I would say, is skills and the ability and the willingness to step back, to take a step back to move two steps forward, right? So uh, let's talk about those two things. Skill is that, everyone wants to be in capital markets, but you can't be, right? You have to earn the right to be there. You have to fundamentally form the framework to be able to do real investing. That is needed. And the second thing which is needed after that, once you think you have arrived there, you've run a model portfolio of your own, you've formed a few investment theses, you've seen it go right, that is when you can that is when one can reach out to broader section of people to try and get into those roles. Those roles may not give you a lot of credit for all the years in FP&A, for sure, because their role is not to do FP&A. You'll have to be able to accept that as a loss and sort of like take a step back. So to take your example, let's say if someone is getting 2025, but if they are getting a role which they like in a segment, in a sector which they like, but they're getting, let's say, 15, I think it's worthwhile to start if it's a skill based role, because that 15 in couple of years can become 30 and can become 60, right? But if you don't do that 15, then you will be in the same 7%, 8%, 9% increment journey every year. And sort of like, therefore, the older you grow, the less become your chance. And that's the reality of the world we live in. No one wants to hire a 42-year-old analyst or an associate. That's just not going to happen. But that's the reality of it, right? So so the older you grow, the less chances are. So if you want to do it, get the skill and switch now, rather than thinking that you will do it after a few years.
Okay, what is the scene in the investing world when it comes to hiring? Like what is happening? Are they struggling? Plus you can also combine, if it is possible, along with your answer, that at your level, how have you seen AI transform this entire landscape? So what will happen to those who are applying for jobs and those who are uh, taking them in? Okay, what is the employment scene like?
So I think of hiring happens in a couple of different ways in investing world. One is your standard undergrad, postgrad hiring and that career track, and then the other is laterals. So think of undergrad, postgrad career track is hiring would happen from academically good institutions, selecting the top player out of them, calling them for interviews. The whole conversation we did, right, around spikes to get selected, around skills to get converted into interviews. The lateral hiring is a bit of a, I would say, that has less process or defined system around it. I have seen someone go from VP of a pharma company to become an investor in a fund which does a lot of healthcare investing, and this guy has done really well in life, right? After done sort of like become almost the top three uh, healthcare private equity investors in the country. Uh, Similarly, people go from being someone in Israeli army to joining Sequoia Capital, right? So laterals can come from all spheres of life, because investment firms like different ideas into the room. They do not want everyone to be an HBS Wharton MBA and then sort of like think in a similar or monotonous fashion. So people want fresh ideas into the room. They hire from industry. They hire from, let's say, all forms of people from very diverse background as well. But the issue is you can't solve for that. As students of finance, as people working in finance, we cannot solve to get that. But what we can solve is when we get that opportunity, when we are interacting with someone who can get us there, we should have the, let's say, the basic mental model to be able to convert those, right? So I think therefore skill is therefore as important.
And now the AI part.
So AI is sort of like, I would say, our own journey in that is still early days. I think different firms are using it in different ways. I think at our firm, because we are still young as a firm, we have integrated it in a fashion which is sort of like, which is still, I would say, simpler. Reading call transcripts or summarizing them, or reading analyst reports and summarizing them, understanding the street view, understanding what is differentiated. That is where we follow. But of course, we do understand that, larger firms where AI is used massively has taken that game to a completely different level, right? Alternate sources of data, alternate using that to solve for sectoral trends, and then taking bets accordingly, right? Is one example. And so it's a function of imagination and scale and the resources that firms have, and different people have used it differently. I think the practical implication of that on hiring is that, that day zero, we need to be able to understand at least the public tools, right? Each firm would have their own nuance of additional tools that they use, but they expect you to know what is at least the common stuff and use that, integrated that into your work. No one wants you to now read transcripts of 6 calls to understand how management view changed. They want you to sort of like be able to summarize it. What could have been done in 3 days is now expected in 1 day, right? So that level of smartness one has to bake in. But each firm would have some nuance, some proprietary tools around it, which are sort of like different for those respective firms. So I think it's still evolving. Everyone feels AI will impact everything other than their own, other than what they do. So do we as investors. So we think AI will sort of like impact technology much more than it will impact finance. But reality is, firms need much fewer people now going forward, or let's say much people who use technology in a better fashion.
Okay, so given the fact that you are one of the faculties at Analyst Stack, especially for the private equity, that portion, so you will be basically sitting in my chair and teaching. So how do you think you'll be able to do justice?
I don't. I'm shit scared. I think that's the simple, honest truth. That I think I don't know how to be a faculty, but I know how to share my experiences. So I think the easy part is I have to talk and explain to people what happens in what we do every day, right? So, and that is easy, or I hope it's easy. And I think that to some extent, that is what could help people shape how they think, how they invest. That's what excites me also. But I think theoretically explaining it to them I think I'll be bad at it. So I'm happy that this is a practical learning course where we can take live examples. Sort of like it's easier to explain why I invested in company A, B, and C, and sector X, Y, and Z, than to explain what are good sectors, right? It's just
and that is what students are waiting for, because the theoretical stuff, they are doing it nicely.
Yeah.
Okay, at least in the CFA program, we leave no stones unturned in terms of also the depth, not only the passing part. But as you rightly said to me bilaterally, कि sir, अपने आधे दूर ले जा रहे हैं. Okay, what was your language?
I was just simply saying, I think by educating in the certification courses, we are taking them. हम आधे रास्ते लेके जा रहे हैं, आप पूरे रास्ते लेके जाना चाहिए. I think the practical learning takes them.
So I'm liking that line कि अभी तक आधे रास्ते ले जा रहे थे, अब पूरे रास्ते ले जाना है.
हाँ, नहीं, I think that
पूरे रास्ते पर पूरे रास्ते ले जाने में आप और others who are there in the industry, and especially these are all people aged somewhere around median age around 35-40. I think this is the perfect blend, because you have seen it all. Technological evolution, comfortable with whatever has been evolving, while at the same time you are ready to accept new ideas. many times with age, it so happens that you are damn stuck with whatever I knew, and whatever gave me success in the past is what will work. I'm not willing to listen to anything else. Okay. So I think in this age bracket of 35 to 40 is like perfectly the best, because when I advertised analyst tax, some of my students in the past, they said that sir, इसमें कोई बहुत senior person जो 55-60 years का age का है, वो तो हम लोग को दिखा नहीं. ठीक है. So I think I have seen that there may be exceptions. Many of those guys, they have more stubbornness to accepting that a lot is happening. The entire, see, we don't have the time. Otherwise, we could have talked about your ideas about Trump, trade war, budget, and everything. Okay, but that's my say. So, Krishna, I'm looking forward to this wonderful program, and let's see whether अपने इसको पूरे रास्ते अच्छे से ले जा सकते हैं क्या?
नहीं सर, लेके जाएंगे. I think that's the objective, and we'll make it something that we wanted as students, right? And I think hopefully it helps people be better investors and sort of like be better off in life than what they would be otherwise without it.
Sure. I'm waiting for another round of podcast with you, possibly after 6 months or 1 year, in which we touch upon only markets, and markets.
I think we'll do that in the whole course throughout,
Yeah,
right?
that's also true. Correct.
That's what we are going to be doing for next 6 months.
Correct. Okay. Thank you.
Perfect.